2020 has been a crazy year. We are in the midst of a global pandemic. The markets have seen immense volatility. We're heading into a presidential election in the fall, and I haven't gotten a haircut in 5 months. However, some things never change, like the fact that the IRS never makes things easy. In 2019, the IRS had some very unhappy people as a result of the TCJA that went through in 2017 and affected 2018 tax returns. So, as you all may recall, when the TCJA passed, the IRS tried to be helpful, and what they tried to do was reduce withholding on W-2 income to try to account for the tax law changes. The result was less than optimal. Many folks were surprised by their tax bill or by the amount of a tax refund that they got in respect to those tax changes that happened. So as a result, the IRS has now rolled out a new form W-4 for 2020. Okay. And while this seems great and it is intended to accomplish and solve some issues, the new W-4 form is a bit confusing. So not a big surprise when it comes to dealing with the IRS. So before 2020, essentially, the W-4 form was very simple. I have one up on my screen here. Essentially, all you needed to do was indicate your filing status, single, married, or married but withholded single rate. You needed to denote the number of allowances that you were eligible for, and that typically involved dependents. Okay. And then you could also make an election to simply withhold extra amount from your paycheck, and you could decide what that amount was. So for people with households with multiple jobs, or if they have income from other sources that are not being withheld on, like self-employment income, portfolio income, you can really account for that very simply through this old W-4. The last step, simply just sign your name and date it, and you are done. Okay. Here is what the new W-4 looks like for 2020. It is a much longer form, and while the IRS had good intentions as far as what they were trying to accomplish in making these changes, it becomes a little bit confusing to fill out. So I'm going to walk through this at a very high level and give you a sense for some of the changes, some things to be looking at, thinking about, and give you a few tips as well for anybody who's going to be filling one of these out. So one important thing to note is that the IRS is not making everybody submit a new W-4 form. Okay. If you're keeping your former employer, or you're staying with your employer, and you're happy with your current withholding, then they are not making you make any changes. But if you start a new job, or if you want to change your W-4, this is what you're going to be working with. The form, if you have a very simple tax situation, is pretty simple. When I say simple tax situation, I mean one job. Within the household, you file single, you don't itemize, there's really no tax credits or anything. But the form becomes a little bit more nuanced or complex if you have a more complex situation, or if you have different things going on. If you're a high earner, if you have multiple incomes within the household, if you have portfolio income, self-employment income, if you're going to benefit from some tax credits, that's when it becomes a little bit more nuanced and difficult to fill out. Okay. The goal of this entire form is really to help people dial into what their total withholding should be. Okay. Across all of the different income. So this is really what the form is trying to help people to do. So they have good intentions. Having said that, let me walk through this and I'll show you some of the different things that have changed since the last W-4, which we all came to know and I guess love. The first section is still pretty consistent with the prior years. Simply write in your name, address, personal information, and then select the filing status that you want. Okay, so that should be pretty easy. For filing status, you can always look at your tax return and it should be really easy to discern. The second step of this W-4 is to identify if there are multiple incomes within the household. Okay, so there's 3 different steps that the form walks you through. One tool that the IRS has rolled out and made available is a withholding estimator. Okay, so they're trying to provide people with the resources to be able to identify the right withholding so they're not caught by surprise with a surprise tax situation when they go to file their returns. So this withholding estimator can be really helpful, but you have to know what to enter and where to pull the information from. And if you're going to have any changes year over year, you're going to need to anticipate those and know where to enter those into the software here. Typically, if there's two incomes within the household and they're both earning similar incomes, then you can simply check this box here and be done with that section. Okay. Section 3 is around dependents. So as a result of TCJA, there's more advantageous child tax credits, which is really what this line right here is looking to accomplish and account for. So if your income is $200,000 or less, or if you're single, or if you're married and your income is under $400,000, then you will be able to benefit, and you have dependents, you will be able to benefit from the child tax credit. Okay. So that is what this is accounting for here. You can enter in the number of qualifying children you have and simply incorporate, go through the steps to incorporate those lines. If you have another dependent that is not a child, then you can also account for them here as well. The last step is to include income from other jobs or other income in general. And they specifically note that this includes interest, dividends, and retirement income. And simply what they want you to do is enter in a number for the amount that's not being withheld on. Okay. So that can or can't be simple depending on your individual tax situation. Sometimes it's difficult to really figure out what's being withheld on versus what's not being withheld on and how that flows through. Deductions can also be pretty nuanced. Right here, they want you to essentially indicate whether you're taking the standard deduction or whether you're going to be taking itemized deductions. And if you're taking itemized, what the amount should be so that they can factor in the appropriate withholding. So that's really important to know going into filling out this form. Lastly, you can also, similar to the last W-4, you can elect to have extra withholding as well, taken out from each pay period. Okay. So at a high level, those are the different components of the new W-4. And again, the IRS has good intentions here. They just want people to really dial into the amount that they should be withholding or setting aside for taxes throughout the year, regardless of whether that's coming through W-2 wages or whether that's coming through other sources. I think the reality is that if you're handling this by yourself, this can be really difficult and confusing to go through. And I would suggest using the tax withholding estimator to at least dial into those amounts and make sure that you're completing this correctly. Your job is not done once the form is completed and filed. Okay. And I think that's a really important component. I had a situation once where I had someone write in exempt as one of the line items, and they did not have any withholding taken out. They did not know what to write in. They wrote an exempt. They didn't have any withholding taken out. And when we saw their net pay, we knew something was wrong. And then we got a pay stub. We saw that there was no withholding happening. So after you fill out this form, it is so important to at least go back, get a pay stub after your first pay period, make sure there was withholding, make sure that everything is coming through correctly. And if you're working with an advisor, you're working with a tax accountant and someone who has a tax background, one of my suggestions is always to run a tax projection. Okay. You're always going to want to take a look at and make sure that the withholding that you have coming through here is appropriate given your current situation. And you can choose to address other sources of income through this W-4, or you can simply address it through things like estimated tax payments. Okay. So it's different for every person, but you really want to make sure that for your situation, you're not going to get hit with any tax surprises as a result of filling out this somewhat confusing W-4 form incorrectly. So get a pay stub, make sure things are calculating correctly, cross-check your work in the tax withholding estimator if you are someone who's doing this alone. And if you are working with an advisor or an accountant, be sure to loop them in and make sure that you're providing them with a pay stub so that they have the information necessary to identify if you're on track or if you need to be doing anything differently. Okay. And of course, needless to say, if you are a single point client, you can always reach out to us, and we will be more than happy to help interpret and help you navigate through this. So have a great day. I hope this short tutorial is helpful at a very high level, and if there's anything that we can be helpful with, we are more than happy to be helpful. So feel free to reach out. Thank you.